When my own family stole my emergency fund to fund my cousin's degree, I had no choice but to take legal action. Full story. The notification from my banking app made my heart stop. Warning. Account balance below emergency threshold. I blinked hard, hoping I'd misread it, but the numbers didn't lie. My carefully maintained emergency fund of $42,000 had dwindled to just over $3,000. My name is Michelle, and until that moment, I thought I had my life perfectly organized. At 32, I'd spent years building that safety net, living frugally and saving every extra dollar I could. Now, staring at my phone screen in my apartment's kitchen, my hands started to shake. I immediately called the bank. There must be some mistake, I said, pacing back and forth. I haven't made any large withdrawals. The representative's voice was sympathetic but firm. I'm showing several transfers over the past 3 months, ma'am, all authorized using your credentials. What? That's impossible. I grabbed my laptop and logged into my account. The transaction history showed multiple transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Can you tell me who owns the receiving account? The account belongs to Elizabeth Diaz, my Aunt Elizabeth. My coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the kitchen floor. I never authorized these transfers. Never. I called my parents immediately, my voice shaking. Mom, what's going on with my emergency fund? Why is Aunt Elizabeth receiving my money? The long pause that followed told me everything. Honey, my mother started, her voice small. We needed to help Regina with her college tuition. She got into that prestigious program she wanted. You what? I practically screamed. How did you even get access to my account? Remember when you were sick last year? You gave me your banking passwords to help manage your bills. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I'd been bedridden with pneumonia for weeks, and my mother had helped manage my finances temporarily. I'd trusted her completely. That money was for emergencies, I said, my voice breaking. My emergencies. Family helps family, Michelle. My father's voice suddenly joined the call. Regina needed the money more than you did. You're established. You have a good job. Stop. I cut him off. You had no right. This is theft. Don't be dramatic, my mother said. Regina's future is at stake. She's family. I ended the call and immediately dialed my best friend Jade. She answered on the second ring. They stole my emergency fund, I said, my voice hollow. My own family stole over $38,000 from me to pay for Regina's college. They did what? Jade's outrage was exactly what I needed. Michelle, that's not just morally wrong. It's illegal. You need to call a lawyer. But they're family, I whispered, echoing my mother's words even as they made me sick. Family doesn't steal from family, Jade said firmly. Listen to me. If you don't take action now, they'll never respect your boundaries. They'll keep taking and taking. My phone buzzed with a text from Regina. Please understand, cousin. This opportunity means everything to me. Mom and Aunt said you'd want to help. I threw my phone onto the couch. They didn't even ask me, Jade. They just took it. Like, I didn't matter. Like, all my hard work meant nothing. Then make them understand it matters, Jade said. I have a number for a good family lawyer. His name is Nigel. Want me to set up a meeting? I looked around my apartment at the life I'd built, the independence I'd fought for. The broken coffee mug on the floor seemed to mirror my shattered trust. Yes, I said finally, my voice stronger. Set it up. I'm done being the family ATM. Another text buzzed through, this time from my brother Kelvin. Mom and Dad told me what happened. They're saying you're overreacting. What are you going to do? I typed back what I have to do. Jade was still on the line. I'll pick you up tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll go see Nigel together. After hanging up, I sat in my quiet apartment surrounded by the pieces of my broken mug and broken trust. My family had always preached about loyalty, about helping each other, but as I looked at my bank balance again, I realized their version of family loyalty was a one-way street. My phone kept buzzing with messages from various family members, all trying to justify the theft, all trying to make me feel guilty for being upset. I turned it off. Tomorrow, I would see a lawyer. Tomorrow, I would start fighting back. But tonight, I allowed myself to cry for the family I thought I had, and for the harsh reality of who they really were. Jade's car pulled into the law office parking lot exactly at 8:55 a.m. I hadn't slept much, but the morning sunlight and 3 cups of coffee had given me enough energy to face what was coming. You look like hell, Jade said, giving my hand a squeeze as we walked into the building. Thanks. That's exactly what every girl wants to hear before meeting her lawyer. The elevator ride to the 6th floor was silent. My phone had blown up overnight with messages from family members, each one more guilt-inducing than the last. I'd only responded to Kelvin, who seemed genuinely concerned, rather than accusatory. Nigel's office was smaller than I expected, but warm and welcoming. The lawyer himself was an older man, with kind eyes that hardened when I explained my situation. Let me get this straight, he said, leaning forward in his chair. Your mother used passwords you provided during an illness to transfer money from your personal emergency fund to your aunt's account, without your knowledge or consent. Yes, I said, pulling out my phone. I have screenshots of all the transactions. They took $38,750 over 3 months. Jade, sitting beside me, spoke up. And they're not even sorry. They're acting like Michelle's the bad guy for being upset about it. Nigel's expression darkened. This is a clear case of financial fraud, regardless of family ties. However, he paused, looking at me carefully. Are you prepared for what pursuing legal action against your family might mean? What do you mean? Family court cases can get ugly, very ugly, especially when money's involved. Your relatives might say things, do things that can't be taken back. Are you ready for that? I thought about my mother's dismissive tone, my father's assumption that my hard work meant less than Regina's dreams, and my aunt's entitled silence through it all. They already crossed a line that can't be uncrossed, I said firmly. I want my money back. Nigel nodded, pulling out some forms. Then let's begin. We'll start with, my phone buzzed. Regina's name flashed on the screen. Take it, Nigel said. It might be relevant. I answered, putting it on speaker. Regina? Michelle, please. Her voice cracked. I heard you're meeting with a lawyer. You can't do this to me, to us. I'm about to start my 2nd semester, and if you make Mom return the money, I'll have to drop out. That's not my problem, Regina. You should have thought about that before accepting stolen money. I didn't know, she protested. Mom and Aunt said you agreed to help. I only found out the truth yesterday when everything blew up. I looked at Nigel, who was taking notes. Whether you knew or not doesn't change anything. That money was my safety net, but I'm so close to my dreams. Regina's voice turned desperate. Just give me a chance to finish this semester. I'll work part-time, take loans, anything. Please don't ruin this for me. Jade grabbed my hand as I closed my eyes. Regina, I'm sorry, but I can't trust any promises right now. You need to talk to your mom about this. Mom's crying. She says you're destroying the family over money. Is that what you want? Nigel cleared his throat, signaling me to wrap it up. What I want is my money back, I said firmly. What happens after that is up to your mom. Goodbye, Regina. I hung up, my hands shaking. Jade immediately pulled me into a hug. You did great, she whispered. Nigel finished his notes and looked up. That call actually helps our case. Your cousin essentially admitted the money was taken without your knowledge. Now let's discuss our strategy. For the next hour, we went through the legal process. Nigel explained how we'd first send a formal demand letter, giving them a chance to return the money before filing a civil suit. What if they refuse? I asked. Then we go to court. With the evidence we have, the unauthorized transfers, their admissions, and your documented history of saving this money, we have a strong case. As we wrapped up the meeting, my phone buzzed again. A text from Kelvin. Just talk to Regina. She's a mess. But I get why you're doing this. Can we meet? I think there's more to this story than anyone's telling. I showed the message to Nigel. Meet him, he advised. Information is power. Just don't make any promises or agreements without consulting me first. Outside the office, Jade hugged me again. Want me to come with you to meet Kelvin? I shook my head. I need to do this part alone, but thank you for everything. That's what best friends are for. She smiled. Keep me posted. As I watched her drive away, I texted Kelvin back. Coffee shop on 5th Street, 1 hour. The war for my emergency fund was officially beginning, and I needed all the allies I could get. The coffee shop was busy when I arrived, but I spotted Kelvin immediately in our usual corner booth. He looked tired, his usually neat hair disheveled, and he was nervously shredding a paper napkin. You look about as good as I feel, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Yeah. Well, it's been a rough couple of days. He pushed a coffee toward me. Already ordered your usual. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup. So what's this other story I need to hear? Kelvin glanced around before leaning forward. It's worse than you think, Michelle. Aunt Elizabeth isn't just using your money for Regina's tuition. She's been running a whole scheme. What do you mean? Remember how she always bragged about Regina getting that full scholarship? There was no scholarship. She's been taking money from different family members, playing them against each other, making up stories about emergency needs. My stomach dropped. How do you know this? Because she tried it with me first, he admitted, looking ashamed. 3 months ago she came to me asking for money for Regina's special program fees. When I said I couldn't afford it, she started guilt-tripping me about family loyalty. That's when I started digging. The bell above the coffee shop door chimed and we both jumped. It was just another customer, but Kelvin's paranoia was starting to make sense. How many others? I asked. At least 3 cousins and Uncle Rob. Each thinks they're the only one helping. Each got a different story. He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of messages. Look at these texts, from Aunt Elizabeth to our cousin Sarah. She told her Regina needed money for medical bills. I scrolled through the messages, my anger building. Does Regina know about all this? I don't think so. Not everything, but he hesitated. But what? She's not as innocent as she pretends. I overheard her and Aunt Elizabeth arguing last week. Regina was demanding more money for some spring break trip, saying she deserved it after playing her part so well. The coffee in my stomach turned sour. Playing her part? Those tears on the phone earlier, the desperate college student act? She's been doing that with everyone and Elizabeth scams. I pushed my coffee away feeling sick. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was gathering evidence, he said, pulling out a USB drive, bank statements, text messages, recordings of conversations. I was planning to confront Aunt Elizabeth myself, but then this happened with your money, and he slid the drive across the table. I think your lawyer could use this. The bell chimed again. This time Regina walked in. She froze when she saw us, then straightened her shoulders and marched over. Having a nice family meeting without me? She asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Sit down, Regina, I said coldly. We need to talk about your acting career. Her face paled slightly, but she sat. I don't know what you mean. Cut the act, Kelvin snapped. We know about the fake scholarship, the multiple stories, the spring break demands, all of it. Regina's facade cracked. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Mom's been planning my whole life since I was born. The right school, the right program, the right connections. Do you know what it's like to have your entire future mapped out by someone else? So you decided to help her steal from your family? I asked. I didn't steal anything. I just played along, made things easier. Mom said everyone was happy to help, that it was all arranged. Happy to help? I pulled up my bank statement. Does this look arranged to you? They drained my emergency fund without even asking. Regina's eyes widened at the numbers. I didn't know it was that much. Mom said it was just a few thousand from each person. Well, she lied, Kelvin said. Just like she lied about everything else. Regina's lower lip trembled, but this time I could see the calculation behind it. What are you going to do? I'm going to get my money back, I said firmly. And now, thanks to Kelvin, I can help everyone else get their money back too. You'll destroy Mom, Regina whispered. No, Regina. Your mom destroyed herself when she decided to steal from her family. Regina stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I won't help you hurt her, I can't. As she stormed out, Kelvin turned to me. What now? I picked up the USB drive. Now we take this to Nigel, and then we call a family meeting. All the cousins, Uncle Rob, everyone. It's time they knew the truth. It's going to get ugly, he warned. It already is ugly, I said standing up, but at least now we can fight back with the truth. Nigel's office was crowded with family members 2 days later. Uncle Rob paced by the window while our cousins Sarah and Marcus sat rigidly on the small couch. Kelvin stood beside me, his presence reassuring as we waited for Nigel to finish reviewing the evidence. This is extensive, Nigel said, looking up from his computer. The systematic nature of these deceptions changes everything. What do you mean? Sarah asked, her voice small. It means this isn't just about Michelle's emergency fund anymore, Nigel explained. We're looking at a pattern of deliberate financial fraud targeting multiple family members. Uncle Rob stopped pacing. I gave her $12,000. She said Regina needed emergency dental surgery. She told me it was for special academic counseling, Marcus added. Another $8,000. And I gave her $15,000 for supposed medical bills, Sarah whispered. I took out a personal loan for that. Nigel typed rapidly on his keyboard. That brings the total to over $73,000, not including Michelle's $38,000. The room fell silent as the number sank in. Over $100,000 stolen from family through elaborate lies. I can't believe Regina was part of this, Sarah said, shaking her head. She seemed so genuine when she called to thank me. She's a better actress than we thought, Kelvin replied bitterly. The crying, the gratitude, the promises to pay it back, all rehearsed. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Why are you doing this to your aunt, to Regina? We raised you better than this. I showed the message to Kelvin, who snorted. Yeah, they raised us, to be honest, except when they're the ones lying. Nigel cleared his throat. I've prepared individual civil suits for each of you, but I recommend we present them as a united case. It strengthens our position. What about criminal charges? Uncle Rob asked. That's an option, but it would mean involving the police. Are you all prepared for that possibility? Before anyone could answer, the office door burst open. Aunt Elizabeth stood there, Regina hovering behind her. So, this is your little conspiracy meeting? Aunt Elizabeth's voice was sharp. Turning my own family against me? You did that yourself. I stood up facing her. When you decided to steal from all of us. Steal? I borrowed money for my daughter's future, for your cousin's education. Then why lie? Sarah demanded, finding her voice. Why make up different stories for each of us? Regina stepped forward. Mom, what is she talking about? Don't act innocent now, Kelvin snapped. We have proof you were in on it. Regina, Nigel intervened calmly. Would you like to see the evidence? The multiple stories, the different amounts, your recorded conversations about playing your part? Regina's face crumpled. Mom, you said everyone knew. You said they all agreed. Of course, they agreed, Aunt Elizabeth shouted. They just didn't know they were agreeing, but it was for you, baby. Everything was for you. I never wanted this, Regina whispered. Not like this. Nigel stood up. Mrs. Diaz, I suggest you leave now and contact your own lawyer. We'll be filing our suits this afternoon. You wouldn't dare, Aunt Elizabeth hissed. We're family. Family doesn't steal from family. I quoted my mother's words back at her. Isn't that what you always taught us? Regina suddenly turned to her mother. How much? How much did you take from everyone? It doesn't matter. Over $100,000, Marcus cut in. That's how much your mother stole from us. Regina staggered back like she'd been slapped. 100,000. Mom, what have you done? What I had to do. Aunt Elizabeth grabbed Regina's arm. Come on, we're leaving. These people clearly don't understand family loyalty. But Regina pulled away. No, I'm not going anywhere with you. She turned to Nigel. I want to make a statement about everything I know. Regina, Aunt Elizabeth's voice cracked. You can't. I can and I will. Regina's voice was steady for the first time. I'm tired of the lies, Mom. Tired of being your excuse. As Aunt Elizabeth fled the office, Regina sat down heavily in an empty chair. I'll tell you everything. How she planned it, who else she targeted, all of it. Nigel pulled out a fresh legal pad. Start from the beginning. I looked around the room at Sarah wiping away tears, at Marcus staring at his hands, at Uncle Rob finally sitting down exhausted, at Kelvin standing strong beside me, at Regina, preparing to confess everything. This wasn't how family was supposed to be. But maybe through all this pain and betrayal, we could build something stronger, something honest. Okay, Regina took a deep breath. It started 2 years ago when Mom first found out about the college program. The courthouse mediation room felt too small for the tension it contained. I sat between Kelvin and Jade, facing Aunt Elizabeth and her lawyer across the table. Regina had chosen to sit at the end, belonging to neither side anymore. Before we begin, the mediator said, I want to remind everyone that this is an attempt to resolve this matter without going to trial. Mrs. Diaz has requested this meeting to propose a settlement. Aunt Elizabeth's lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Miss Peters, cleared her throat. My client is prepared to offer a payment plan to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, Jade muttered under her breath. I squeezed her hand to keep her quiet. We propose monthly payments of $500 to each affected party, Miss Peters continued, until the full amount is repaid. Nigel leaned forward. At that rate, it would take over 16 years to repay the full amount. That's not acceptable. It's what I can afford. Aunt Elizabeth spoke for the first time, her voice trembling. I've already taken out a second mortgage on my house. What about the money you took? I asked. Where did it all go? Regina shifted uncomfortably. The college program only cost about $40,000. The rest went to maintaining appearances, Aunt Elizabeth cut in. Regina needed to look the part to fit in with her wealthy classmates. The right clothes, the right car, the right apartment. So you stole from your family to keep up with the Joneses? Kelvin's voice was ice cold. That's your excuse? You don't understand the pressure? No. You don't understand. I slammed my hand on the table, making everyone jump. That money wasn't yours to take. My emergency fund was for actual emergencies. Sarah took out a personal loan to help you. Uncle Rob delayed his retirement. Also, Regina could have designer clothes? Regina started crying. I never knew. Mom kept saying everything was handled, that everyone was happy to help. I should have asked more questions. Yes, you should have, Jade said quietly. But you didn't want to know the truth, did you? The mediator raised her hand. Let's focus on the settlement proposal. Mrs. Diaz, do you have any other assets that could be liquidated to increase the monthly payments? Aunt Elizabeth looked at her lawyer, who nodded slightly. I have some jewelry and investments. The jewelry and investments combined are worth approximately $60,000, Miss Peters added. Nigel consulted his notes. That would still leave over $40,000 to be repaid. I'll get a job, Regina suddenly said. A real one, not the part-time thing Mom wanted me to do for appearances. I can contribute to the payments. You don't have to, Aunt Elizabeth started. Yes, I do. Regina stood up. I benefited from this money even if I didn't know it was stolen. I need to help make it right. The mediator nodded approvingly. That could work. If Mrs. Diaz liquidates her assets immediately and combines that with higher monthly payments from both herself and Regina, We could be repaid within 3 years, Nigel calculated, with appropriate interest and legal fees. I added firmly. Miss Peters whispered something to Aunt Elizabeth, who nodded tearfully. We accept these terms. I'll start liquidating everything tomorrow. There's one more condition, I said, looking directly at my aunt. You need to tell everyone the truth, not just those of us in this room, but the entire family. No more lies, no more manipulation. Michelle? No. I cut her off. That's non-negotiable. Either you come clean to everyone, or we go to trial. Your choice. The room fell silent. Regina reached over and touched her mother's hand. Mom, please, we need to stop living this lie. Aunt Elizabeth seemed to deflate. Fine. I'll tell everyone everything. The next hour was spent drafting the formal agreement. As we prepared to leave, Regina caught my arm. I know it doesn't mean much now, she said, but I'm sorry for everything, for not asking questions, for playing along, for letting this happen. I looked at her, really looked at her. The designer clothes suddenly seemed like a costume, the expensive jewelry like chains. What will you do now? I asked. Transfer to a state school. Get a real job. Start living in the real world instead of Mom's fantasy. She managed a weak smile. Maybe become the person I want to be instead of the person she wanted me to be. As we left the courthouse, Jade linked her arm through mine. You okay? I watched Aunt Elizabeth and Regina walking to their car, no longer the proud, polished pair they'd once been. I think I will be. At least now everyone knows the truth. Truth has a way of setting things right, Kelvin said, joining us, even if it hurts like hell getting there. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. I heard what happened at mediation. Can we talk? I showed the message to Kelvin and Jade. One battle at a time, Jade advised. I nodded, putting my phone away. The war wasn't over, but at least now we were fighting with the truth on our side. The family gathering at Uncle Rob's house felt more like a trial than a confession. Everyone was there, cousins, aunts, uncles, even distant relatives who'd heard whispers of the scandal. Aunt Elizabeth stood in the center of the living room, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. I've asked you all here because I need to tell you something, she began, her voice shaking. I've done something terrible. As she spoke, laying out her web of lies and manipulation, the reactions around the room shifted from confusion to shock to anger. My mother sat rigid beside my father, her face growing paler with each revelation. You told me Regina needed money for medical treatments, Uncle Rob's wife said, standing up. We emptied our vacation fund for that, and you told us it was for special academic programs, another cousin chimed in. We trusted you. Regina, sitting in the corner, kept her head down as the accusations flew. She'd changed in the weeks since the mediation. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. She looked more real somehow in her simple jeans and t-shirt. There's more, I said, stepping forward. Mom, Dad, you need to explain your part in this. My mother's head snapped up. Michelle, please. No. My father interrupted, surprising everyone. She's right, we need to come clean too. He stood up, addressing the room. We helped Elizabeth access Michelle's emergency fund. We gave her the passwords, helped her hide the transfers. The room erupted again. Kelvin moved to stand beside me as our parents faced the family's judgment. How could you do that to your own daughter? Aunt Patricia demanded. We thought we were helping family, my mother said weakly. Elizabeth said Michelle had agreed. But you never asked me, I cut in. You never even mentioned it to me. Because we knew you'd say no, my mother burst out. You've always been so rigid about money, so unwilling to help family in need. Regina suddenly stood up. That's not true. Michelle helped me with my college applications. She spent hours tutoring me for my SATs. She helped because I asked her directly, honestly. Regina? Aunt Elizabeth warned. No, Mom, I'm done hiding. Regina moved to the center of the room. I need to confess too. I knew some of what was happening. I played along, pretended to be desperate when Mom needed to convince people to give money. I'm not proud of it, but I did it. The silence that followed was deafening. So what happens now? Someone asked. Nigel, who'd been quietly observing from the doorway, stepped forward. Mrs. Diaz has agreed to repay everyone through asset liquidation and a payment plan. Regina will also contribute to the repayment. And the legal charges? Uncle Rob asked. We've agreed to handle this civilly provided all terms are met, I explained, including full transparency about everything that happened. My mother stood up suddenly. I need to say something too. She turned to face me, tears in her eyes. Michelle, I betrayed your trust. I convinced myself it was okay because you're my daughter, because family helps family. But what I did, what we did, it was wrong. I'm so sorry. I wanted to stay angry, to hold on to my hurt, but seeing her there, finally acknowledging her mistake, cracked something in my chest. I trusted you, I said quietly. Both of you. That's what hurts the most. We know, my father said, moving to stand beside my mother. We'd like to make it right. We've decided to sell our vacation property to help repay your emergency fund. Aunt Elizabeth's head snapped up. The lake house? But that's been in the family for generations. And family helps family, my father said firmly, using her own words against her, the right way this time. Regina walked over to me. I start my new job tomorrow. It's just waiting tables, but it's honest work, and I've enrolled in community college for next semester. Good for you, I said, meaning it. The rest of the evening was a blur of tears, accusations, and eventually, tentative steps toward reconciliation. As family members began to leave, each stopping to hug me or whisper apologies, Kelvin nudged my shoulder. Look, he said, pointing to where Regina and my mother were talking quietly in the corner. Think they'll be okay? Eventually, I said. Once they learn to live in reality instead of fantasy. Jade, who'd been my silent support throughout the evening, squeezed my hand. You did it. You stood up for yourself and made them face the truth. We did it. I corrected her, including Kelvin in my glance. I couldn't have done this alone. As we left Uncle Rob's house, I felt lighter somehow. The money wasn't all back yet. The trust wasn't fully rebuilt, but at least now everything was in the open. Sometimes I realized that's where healing has to start. 3 months after the family confession, I sat in Nigel's office reviewing the repayment progress. The first wave of restitution had come through. Proceeds from Aunt Elizabeth's jewelry sales and my parents' lake house. The numbers are looking good, Nigel said, sliding a document across his desk. Your emergency fund is almost halfway restored. I scanned the figures, noting the regular deposits from both Regina and Aunt Elizabeth's wages. True to her word, Regina had taken a job waiting tables, and was working double shifts to contribute more. Have you heard from your parents lately? Nigel asked, closing his laptop. They come over for dinner once a week now. It's different. Better in some ways, harder in others. I traced the edge of the paper. At least they're trying. A knock at the door interrupted us. Jade poked her head in. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was awful. Perfect timing, Nigel said. We were just discussing the latest developments, including this. He pulled out another document, and Elizabeth is requesting a meeting. My stomach tightened. Why? She says she has something important to tell everyone. She wants all affected family members present. The last family meeting went so well, I muttered but nodded. When? Tomorrow afternoon. I've already contacted everyone else. The next day, I arrived at Nigel's office to find it even more crowded than before. Uncle Rob and his wife sat near the window, while Sarah and Marcus took their usual spots on the couch. My parents stood awkwardly near the door, and Regina sat alone in a corner wearing her waitress uniform. She'd come straight from her shift. Aunt Elizabeth entered last, looking years older than she had just months ago. She carried a large envelope. Thank you all for coming, she said, her voice rough. I've sold my house. The room went silent. What? Regina stood up. Mom, where will you live? I'm moving into a small apartment. The house sale will cover most of the remaining restitution. She opened the envelope and handed papers to Nigel. The closing is next week. My mother stepped forward. Elizabeth, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Aunt Elizabeth cut her off. I've spent my whole life pretending to be something I'm not, pushing Regina to live up to impossible standards and hurting the people who truly cared about me. It's time to face reality. Regina moved to her mother's side. I'll help with the apartment rent. Between my waitressing jobs and the barista position I just got, we can make it work. You should focus on your studies, Aunt Elizabeth protested. I am. Community college is affordable, and I'm learning more there than I ever did trying to keep up appearances at that expensive university. Nigel reviewed the house sale documents. With this, everyone could be repaid within the month rather than over 3 years. That's what I want, Aunt Elizabeth said firmly. A clean slate, no more debts, no more lies. Uncle Rob cleared his throat. What about your retirement? I'll keep working. Maybe it's time I learned the value of honest work like my daughter has. I watched Regina squeeze her mother's hand, saw the genuine pride in Aunt Elizabeth's eyes as she looked at her daughter in her simple work uniform. Something had shifted between them. Something real had replaced the shallow perfection they'd once pursued. There's one more thing. Aunt Elizabeth turned to me. Michelle, I owe you the biggest apology. I took advantage of your parents' trust in me, manipulated them into betraying you. I was so focused on maintaining appearances that I destroyed the real relationships in my life. We all owed Michelle an apology, my father added, and a debt that goes beyond money. I felt Jade's hand on my shoulder, steadying me as always. The money was important, I said carefully, but the trust was worth more. That's what really needed to be repaid. And has it? Aunt Elizabeth asked softly. Even a little? I looked around the room at Regina working honest jobs to make amends. At my parents trying to rebuild our relationship one dinner at a time, at Aunt Elizabeth selling her precious house to make things right. It's getting there, I said, day by day. Nigel spent the next hour processing the house sale paperwork. As everyone prepared to leave, Regina caught up with me. I'm serving at the diner on 5th Street now, she said. If you ever want coffee, real coffee, not the overpriced stuff I used to insist on, stop by. I smiled. I might do that. Outside, Jade linked arms with me. You okay? Yeah, I said, watching my family members disperse. All of them changed. All of them a little more real than they'd been 3 months ago. I think we all are. Sometimes I realized it takes losing everything to find out what really matters, and sometimes what you rebuild is stronger than what you lost. The last check from the house sale cleared on a sunny Tuesday morning. I stared at my restored emergency fund balance, feeling a complex mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Want company for your coffee run? Jade asked from my apartment doorway. She knew exactly where I was heading. Regina's diner had become a regular stop in my routine, though I hadn't planned it that way. The bell chimed as we entered, and Regina looked up from wiping down a table. The usual? She called out, already reaching for coffee cups. Actually, I said, can we talk for a minute? She nodded, gesturing to an empty booth. My break's in 5 minutes. While we waited, Jade squeezed my hand. You sure about this? It feels right, I said, pulling an envelope from my purse. Regina joined us, sliding into the booth and untying her apron. Everything okay? Mom made her final payment yesterday, right? She did. I pushed the envelope across the table. That's why I wanted to talk to you. Regina opened it carefully, her eyes widening as she read the contents. This is a check for $15,000. I don't understand. It's for your education, I said. A proper loan this time with terms and conditions all spelled out. Jade helped me draw up the paperwork. But why? Regina's voice cracked. After everything? Because you proved something to me these past few months. Working double shifts, living honestly, owning up to your mistakes. You've changed. We all have, she whispered, touching the check gently. The loan has real terms, Jade added, pulling out a document, regular payments, reasonable interest, everything in writing. No shortcuts, no manipulation. Regina straightened her shoulders. I'll pay back every penny the right way this time. I know you will, I said. That's why I'm offering it. The diner's door chimed again. Aunt Elizabeth walked in looking different in her new waitress uniform from the budget restaurant where she'd found work. Mom, Regina called out, look what Michelle's offering. Aunt Elizabeth approached our booth cautiously. When Regina showed her the check and paperwork, she started to cry. After everything we did, she began, that's exactly why I cut in. Because you both showed me that people can change, real change, not just promises. We have family dinner at my new apartment this Sunday, Aunt Elizabeth said hesitantly. Would you come, both of you? She added, including Jade. I glanced at Jade, who nodded slightly. We'll be there. It's not fancy, Regina added quickly. Just home-cooked food and honest conversation. Mom's learning to make lasagna. Learning is a generous word. Aunt Elizabeth laughed, wiping her eyes. But I'm trying. That's all any of us can do, I said, standing up. Try to be better than we were yesterday. As we prepared to leave, Regina hugged me tightly. Thank you, not just for the loan, but for showing me what real strength looks like. Outside, Jade looped her arm through mine. You know what the best revenge is? Living well? No, she grinned. Watching the people who hurt you become better people because of the boundaries you set. My phone buzzed. A message from Kelvin. Mom's asking if you're still coming to dinner tonight. She's finally going to teach us her secret recipe. I smiled, showing Jade the message. My relationship with my parents was still healing. But like Regina's lasagna, we were learning one honest conversation at a time. You know, I said, when I first discovered the theft, I thought my family was destroyed forever. I never imagined we'd end up here. Here being in a better place than where we started. More honest, more real. We reached my car, but I paused before getting in. Through the diner window, I could see Regina showing Aunt Elizabeth the loan paperwork, both of them smiling through tears. In a few hours, I'd be in my parents' kitchen, learning family recipes and building new trust. On Sunday, we'd crowd into Aunt Elizabeth's small apartment, eating imperfect lasagna and sharing honest conversations. My emergency fund was finally restored, but I'd gained something worth far more. A family that had learned the hard way that love without honesty isn't really love at all. Ready to go? Jade asked. Yeah, I said, starting the car. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Because that's the thing about family. Sometimes it has to break completely before it can be rebuilt into something stronger, something true. And sometimes the deepest wounds, when healed properly, leave us with the greatest strength. I pulled away from the curb, leaving the diner behind, but carrying its lessons forward. The future wasn't certain, but at least now it was real, and that made all the difference.